worry. It's like a rocking chair in that it gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. Hi, my name is Ken Coscia. If you've been following my work, you know I've been saying this for a very long time. It's my pleasure to serve as the lead instructor and training director for the Silva Method, now moving into my 51st year. And I've noticed that as all these decades have gone by, we move through ups and downs. You know what it's like in life. And today, no doubt, we have much to be concerned about. So I'm not here to minimize the concerns, the valid concerns we have on so many fronts that we don't even want to go into now. It's just that when we play the what-if game, it's really a misuse of our imagination, isn't it? If it's in a negative context. What if I have an accident? What if I run out of money? What if we have a food shortage? What if? You've heard it before. So let's take a look, and what I'd like to cover with you is let's take a little bit of a look at the science behind this, why it's so important to manage these thoughts, and what you can do about it. So we know that when we play the what-if game, it's really fear-based, isn't it? And when we go into fear, we create a state of being that is not a very pretty state of being. It's a state of being that puts us into survival mode. We stop thinking clearly. We feel increasing amounts of anxiety and fear, sleepless nights, maybe even serious things like depression. So fear, and I'm sure you've heard this before, we could say as an acronym, it's been around for a long time. I don't even remember who first talked about it. Fear is what? False events, real. False events appearing real. Okay, Ken, we understand that. Well, as a friendly reminder, and especially if you're new in this field, when it comes to imagination versus what's real, at these inner conscious levels, the brain does not distinguish between what we vividly imagine and what's actually real. For example, some people have a fear of flying, and just the thought, they're not even near an airplane, and just the thought of going on a trip and boarding a plane causes them to feel what? Anxiety. Some people have a fear of public speaking. Just the thought of giving a presentation before the board of directors, giving a big important pitch, can elicit feelings of anxiety and tension. And they're not even there yet. It's really a shame because it's like paying taxes twice or paying the toll twice. We're suffering needlessly. We're not even there in this situation. The same thing holds true when we have these false events. We make up these stories about ourselves or stories about other people, what he said or what he did, and we don't know for sure. We don't have all the facts. So it's been said that our thoughts are the language of the brain, whereas our feelings are the language of the body. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And in all these decades of doing this work, and now even looking at the modern science through brain science, we know this to be a very accurate statement. So if we look at a little bit more why this is important, you can understand imagination versus what's real at these inner conscious levels, especially like, for example, when we're sleeping, when we're daydreaming, when we're on automatic pilot and not really consciously thinking about what we're saying, what we're thinking. That it begins with this. So let me just put something on the board here for you and flip back. I like to call it the co-creation process. And it's a process of retraining our brains. It's a very fundamental principle, one of the fundamental principles that we use, that I teach in the Silva Method, in the Silva Life and Intuition System, the 40-hour, 4-day training that Mr. Jose Silva researched for 22 years before he went public in 1966. And as you may know, we've been all over the world with it. Millions and millions of people have been through. So this is not really new information in that sense. I would say, though, Just because it's not new doesn't necessarily mean that you have mastered it or that I have mastered it, for that matter. So we know that our thoughts, it begins with our thoughts. So the thoughts being the language of the brain, the thoughts serve as a catalyst, a trigger, if you will, an on switch or off switch to what? Feelings. Those feelings, those emotions, we say, are the language of the body, in that it literally causes the brain to release the chemical messengers of the body, neuropeptides, and that determines our state of being. So if our thoughts are one of worry and we're ruminating on what if this happens, what if I have an accident, what if I run out of money, what if this doesn't work, what if I go into business for myself but I don't build up enough to support my family, and we go through all of these scenarios. What if I go on a plane and it crashes? I mean, I know things happen in life, but all too often these false events that appear real begin to what? So those thoughts will elicit feelings which cause the brain to release more stress hormones, things like cortisol, etc. And as the stress hormones increase, we go into a state of survival, a state of fear. And the state of survival is not one that we grow in. It's a very protective, it's a defensive posture. And when that happens, our blood flow and oxygen gets minimized. The blood vessels get constricted. So there's less blood, less oxygen to the brain, and we have difficulty thinking. And we suppress the higher thinking functions of logic and reasoning. You've heard the expression, perhaps? Desperate people do desperate things. And if you've ever been in a state of desperation, understandably, you've probably made some decisions that you wish you hadn't. And when you look back later and you're calm and in a state of calm, you think very differently. It also blocks your intuition. Those feelings, the chemistry changes. So those feelings cause the brain to release the neurochemicals that affect our behaviors ultimately, because it affects our physiology. It affects the body, and it affects performance. Can you relate? Think of a time. You practice, maybe you're a musician, and you practiced, you rehearsed. Maybe you give presentations, and you practiced, you rehearsed, and you're ready to rock and roll. But then when the actual time of the performance comes, if we get nervous, if we freak out, say, what if they don't like me? What if I make a mistake? What if it doesn't work? Those thoughts, even though it hasn't happened, cause the changes in the body, which affects performance, constricted, and we're more likely to what? Forget, make a mistake, leave something out, and certainly it is nearly impossible for you or I to be at our best, for our best self to emerge, to be in our A game when we're in that state of survival and fear mode. Understand this and learn to master it. It's one of the things we spend 4 full days all throughout the Silva training helping people to learn how to master these thoughts in such a way they work with us. And that, of course, what I'm saying is it affects, and maybe not able to see, but your results. So process of co-creation, very important. But another way to look at this is when we play the worry game and we start ruminating on our fears. And again, I don't mean to sound like I'm minimizing it. I share concerns today, living in the world today. I've got 3 grandchildren, 3 grown adults, and I'm concerned for the future. But let me tell you, worrying will not solve anything. Not only will it not solve anything, but it impedes progress. It impedes innovative thinking. And we need more innovative thinking than ever before. We need more ideas. Because if we keep doing what we've been doing, we're going to keep getting the same results. And I'm sure you understand that. So when people go into worry mode, they're what? Inadvertently giving attention to what they don't want. And the law of attention is very clear. Whatever you give attention to, you give energy to. And whatever you give energy to will grow and multiply. You know perhaps the power of creative imagination and creative visualization. So when we're worrying about something and playing that negative what-if game, we're mentally rehearsing, we're visualizing what we don't want. So for example, if you do this at night and you mull over the day and you ruminate on the mistakes or the shortcomings or what you didn't do or what you don't even realize it, you're giving attention to what you don't want. You're mentally rehearsing it, and then you go off to sleep, and the subconscious, so-called inner conscious, will tend to what? Integrate the most dominant thoughts, especially the thoughts before you go to sleep. So another tip here for you is stop watching the news or interacting in a negative way before you go to sleep, at least 30 minutes to an hour before you go, because that's what gets integrated into those dominant thoughts. So at night, instead of ruminating on the mistake and what you did, forgive yourself. Recognize we're all fellow human beings doing the best we know how to do. And rewind it, so to speak. So you rewind it to when it happened. Forgive yourself. Give yourself permission not to be perfect. And reframe it. So go to sleep thinking about what if in a positive sense. And what if I was at my best? And what if I bring my A game with me? And what if I was clear and articulate and connected with my patients, my clients, my friends, my spouse? You get the idea? So another solution here, another tip, what you can do about this is it's important that you acknowledge, I acknowledge, that we acknowledge the way things are, the current reality. We just don't want to make it worse than it is. We just don't want to ruminate on it. So I couldn't say this enough. Having worked with hundreds of thousands of people in in-person events, by the way, all throughout the world, it's been such a joy. The one cautionary teaching reminder that I always often offer is that when you acknowledge a problem, when you acknowledge the way things are, that's not being negative, and that's not going to make it worse. It's important to acknowledge our feelings. It's important to acknowledge what we're feeling. If it's grief, it's not a quick fix. You may need, it doesn't matter how much time you need, but you need time to heal. If it's you've made some serious mistakes and you're rebuilding your business, okay, it's not a quick fix. But ruminating on it, worrying, will only make it worse because it'll be hard to bring your best self out. So we acknowledge it. We become aware of where the feelings come from. What is it that I'm really afraid of? And if we did that, we wouldn't mindlessly eat, as an example. We wouldn't have the mindless bad habits that we have. You can say to yourself, as you acknowledge it, and before you move on, this too shall pass. Dear friend of mine, Harry McKnight, one of the very early, before my time, well, not before my time, but started before me, Harry McKnight, used to say, this too shall pass. So you're recognizing, you're honoring your struggle, you're honoring what you're experiencing, and recognize this is a temporary condition. And it's temporary as long as you take action and as long as you get the help. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and you've been traumatized physically, emotionally, in whatever capacity, you may need to work with a clinical psychologist. You may need to get professional help. There's nothing wrong with that. It may not even take that much. Or you may need to hire a mentor, a coach. You may need to get some more training or read a self-help, whatever it is that will help you to work with it, process your feelings, and then move on. That's what I mean by this too shall pass, temporary condition. You got this. I believe in you. The only difference between you and I as I stand here is experience. I've been living this for over 50 years. I've been practicing this. I'm both a student of this throughout my past 50 some odd years, and I'm also a teacher of it. So that's the difference between someone maybe like yourself who has very little experience and someone like myself who does, or anyone that you see out there and go, whoa, how do they do it? Practice, practice. You got to have consistent action, consistent application, implementation of what you know. So another tool I would highly recommend to you is take time to quiet yourself in what I call, when I work with businesses, a relaxation and focusing exercise, aka meditation, to get into a calm, relaxed state. In the Silva Method, we teach you how to change your brain waves to move in the direction of sleep with the original alpha theta training, which is very similar to sleep, but the goal is to stay awake consciously. And you don't have to be passive. It's an active form of meditation that we call dynamic meditation. So as you're sitting there in a calm state, some slow deep breaths, a little bit of relaxation, thinking of your happy place, you can mentally rehearse positive outcomes. You can mentally rehearse, what if? But in a positive context, thinking of your life tomorrow, next week, next year, and the years to come. It's a very, very helpful tool on a daily basis to just, in a quiet, relaxed state, think of some possibilities for your future, some positive possibilities, and mentally rehearse that. So play the what if game in a positive sense. I also recommend one last tip is first thing in the morning, own your morning. First thing in the morning, do your meditation instead of watching the news immediately. It's so important because it sets a tone for the whole day. First thing in the morning when you wake up, for about 30 minutes at least, maybe an hour, but especially 30 minutes, we're still here in this quiet, relaxed state where we learn. It's a super learning state. It's something that, by the way, I'm speaking to you from experience. If you know my story, way back in 1971, even with the academic background I had and the preparation I had for the sciences to study engineering, I was flunking out of Boston University. It was horrible. And the worst part is, the harder I tried, the more I thought about it, the worse it got. Because I was worrying about it. I was panicking. I was asking for help. I was studying too much. Yeah, you heard me right. I was studying too much. And I became obsessed. And the obsessive state is a fear-based state. And when you're in a state of being like that, it doesn't work. First thing to go is cognition memory. And after 1 year of that and 2 years actually at Boston University, I discovered the Silva Method. I never heard about stuff like this. And I started practicing. We didn't call it meditation so much because it wasn't cool like it is now. But that is, with the original, I notice all the thought leaders today coming out recommending meditation. They never did before. We've been since 1966. And the point is, it works. It's the difference that will make the difference. So I started applying it each and every day consistently. I made lots of mistakes, but I graduated cum laude, and I was studying less. While I was still a full-time student during the day, at night and on the weekends, I did Silva, and I became a full-time Silva instructor in the Boston area before I moved to Connecticut in '74. And then before Mr. Silva asked me to join his elite staff in '84, and I became one of 1,000 instructors, global instructors, only 4, and Mr. Silva was one of them, to teach advanced training. So it kind of really added a lot of fun to my career and opportunity with that. I used to get headaches all the time because of stress, worry. We know that distress in the body is the leading cause of illness. I don't get the headaches anymore, and I don't need the drugs or the medication, etc. I'm far from perfect, but I'm a lot better than I was then. I've been able to raise a family of 3. They're very responsible, serving adults who have their own families, who are doing great things, making positive contributions to the world and thriving, and so on. It's a wonderful set of tools that one day, if you're resonating with this, I invite you to find out more. You can visit my website, Silva Method of Connecticut, or specifically, silvamethodct.com. It would be my pleasure, my joy to work with you. And by the way, our classes, you're not a face in the crowd amongst thousands. It's not pre-recorded videos. It's me guiding you step by step, virtually, via Zoom, or in person, which we're getting ready to go back to, so that your questions are answered immediately. I'm guiding you, coaching you all throughout, and you're not a face lost in the crowd. And everybody in the class, I limit the size to 29 people, and that includes some reviewers. So everybody has a chance to interact, ask their questions, and it makes a world of difference. So my friends, I'm glad you're here, glad you listened. Remember, you're far better than you give yourself credit. What may be missing is understanding, training, practice. And I hope this has served you. Look forward to meeting you one day.